Welcome to Writer Syndrome, podcast about writing from start to finish. This episode's topic, when are you done? When are you finished with that masterpiece? When do you say that's it and move on with life? I'm Russ Capasso, and joining me as always is Tim Letney. Tim, are you done with your...
Never. I've decided I'm never going to finish. I'm just always going to work on this for the rest of my life.
This is it.
This is the one.
This is the one.
That way, if I never finish,
you can never be let down.
Something to work on. I'll never be let down. I'll never fail.
Yeah, it's true. Can't fail if you don't play, right?
Yeah.
We're in a good spot, I think, for this. I am at the point of probably needing to let go of my
artistic masterpiece.
I didn't want to put that label on there, but and you're getting close. You're getting to a point where you're kind of, I mean, you're in like a pretty big push towards the last kind of, I would say, big round of edits for yours, right? And then you're gonna have like,
it's weird, like, because our paths are different in a way. I mean, since you're self-publishing, you made sure to have like a line editor. You've just gotten it back from the copy editor. You've had a lot of professional paid eyes on your piece. Yeah. You know confidently that you're in pretty good shape to send this off to the general public.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do any of that.
Yeah,
I'm going to try to get it to where I can get it based on this round of beta feedback, and then start querying and hope there isn't deafening silence in return. I don't know when to stop whittling it. So I think this is a really good topic for right now, because whereas I think the work that I have teed up to do is important, based on myself, I'm sure I'm going to have something else, like another goalpost to reach toward that will probably, I might fall into this kind of loop of procrastination. And I'm hoping maybe this podcast can steer me away from that.
Maybe there's some steps we could think of like that, or some goalposts that are clear, right? To kind of get you close to being like, okay, I'm done with, I can let this go, right? For me, it's those kind of clear cut steps of like, okay, I've done my own revisions. I've gotten this thing to as far as I can get it, right? And then what's the next big step? Getting out to those stranger readers, the beta readers, right? Having people you don't know take a look through it, making sure they're not coming across any major issues. Having your own kind of checklist of editing process, like making sure you've gone through and highlighted any logic issues and kind of done your own kind of copy line edit process, right? I think these are kind of like the obvious steps, depending if you're going to just go ahead and query versus self-publish, getting professional eyes on it, professional proofreader, which I just got mine back from proofreader, which still blows my mind. They still found stuff after the dozen or so people who've read this thing.
Yeah.
So I think those are like some of the clear cut, like, okay, make sure you've gone through these steps. Then it's like, all right, well, then you get to that point of like letting go of like, okay, it's gone through all this. I've done these things. And what point then do you, what are the signs maybe of like, now I'm just fiddling. Now I'm just...
I mean, I'll tell you, even like taking a step back, every time that I hit one of these kind of rites of passage or goalposts, like when I was sending it to you and Jill, I procrastinated. I did a whole nother edit before I sent it to you, right? Yeah. Just because I think there's a fear, right? There's a fear of what you're putting out there maybe isn't up to snuff. I think especially as a first-time writer, I tried to hone and refine as much as I could to shore up some of my own confidence, I think. Mm-hmm. So then when I got your feedback and Jill's feedback for that second round, I did a whole entire edit. And then when it was time to send it, I reread the whole thing again and did another edit. And I don't know if that was probably active procrastination, where I was like doing something actively, but it probably wasn't as productive, because that's stuff that honestly the beta readers could have caught, but I was doing it based on my fear. So I fully think that before I begin to query, which is my quote unquote letting go, that not only will I do this round of beta, I will probably go through again in like this kind of neurotic way and make sure it's as perfect as it can be. But I think I don't have that, like I'm not investing in professionals to clean it up, or to find, say if character motivations aren't clear or whatnot, or if some names get swapped or something. So I just have this, it's a fear, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Making it perfect, that's not a real thing, right? Obviously, it's kind of like a mental thing of this perfectionism. It's like there's gotta be a certain point where you kind of have to let go. It's funny, quick side note here. You mentioned name swapping. Actually, when I just got mine back from my proofreader, there was a line that she'd caught. I used a complete wrong character's name. I was like, how is this missed? It's like,
my God, yeah.
So it's just like, I think the idea is that you're never really done, and there's always going to be little errors and tweaks to deal with. But I think that perfectionism kind of goal is you have to mentally get over that, because that doesn't exist. And I think it's kind of more tied to like maybe the fear of letting go and letting people read it. I'm still fearful of it, because now it's like, I feel I've got a good story. I've got a good plot. I've got interesting characters, I think, now, but I'm still nervous. I'm still fearful of the readers that would read my book of this genre, who are fans of this genre, may be like, well, it didn't have this detail, or didn't have this thing, or didn't have that, It's like, how do you know when to just pull back from that and be like, all right, this is what I've got, ship it.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think failure, I think maybe that's what procrastination kind of comes from, right? There's this fear of failure, fear of judgment.
Agreed.
So for me, it would be, if in the very, very likely outcome of querying and just no response, just nothing, right? I feel like for authors, and especially first-time authors that don't have they're not sitting on a wealth of marketable material, that's the response. The response is no response.
Yeah.
If I never finish, I never have to deal with that.
You're set.
I'm set. I'm good. I worked with somebody years ago, who wasn't necessarily a published author. They were an academic, but that's how they dealt with their work. It was just things piled up, like these giant anthills or something, and things never got completed. So there was just this myriad of projects that were in various states of close to being finished, but things never finished.
Yep.
And it was really interesting to work around, because they didn't want to let go. So sometimes I don't think it's not always just fear, but it's, I don't know, control or it's interesting. But I think procrastination creeps in ways you don't expect, because you feel like, well, I'm actively working.
Right.
It can't be procrastination, because procrastination is when you don't do things.
Yes, right. But I'm on, thesaurus.com, and I'm looking up new words to change, to word.
Yeah. But then there's I think if you're working in a work of fiction, you're almost doing a disservice if you continue to rewrite and refine, because sure, your voice is changing and you're evolving, but maybe you should be evolving into your next piece. Maybe this is a moment in time that you've captured, and then everything you've learned, you put into the next book, and then the one after that.
That's a great point.
I think by hanging on to the first one, and you'll never be done, because your writing style and your voice is always kind of changing. You're always learning. Yeah. So in a way, I think you need to be, not you, I need to be comfortable with the imperfection of what this is, hope to improve in the future, because I'll never be done. I'll never finish, dude.
The evolution of your ability. It's like listening to the sophomore album for a band too, right? But your evolution as a writer, I can already see the scenes I've written for the second book. I can already see an improvement above and beyond in my own writing. Oh man, I've learned this thing. Now it's interesting, because now I've learned this thing, and then I'm making this better. I'm writing more descriptive scenes. I'm setting things up a bit better. Even my small technical know-how of commas here, he said, action, dialogue, blah blah blah, leaving dialogue tags out. Those are all the mechanics of just, okay, this is something I've learned, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's do I go back and do I apply this to the book? It's not out there yet. I've learned all these things. Maybe I just go back and rewrite that scene, all the stuff I've learned. But I think that turns into just that's going to be a trickle effect of a nightmare of, you just have to accept it. And you're right. I think it's a great way to phrase it. It's a snapshot of my ability at that moment, that time. And I'm still proud of it. I'm still happy with it. And it's still a story, but my second, third, fourth, whatever, are going to be better.
Yeah. And what's crazy for me, right? And this is almost scary, is that for the art that I consume, whether it's books or movies or music, especially, I like the ones that have the imperfections. I very much like people trying and reaching beyond their ability to do something. Yeah. I like independent film. I like sloppy horror movies. I like things that were that are kind of pushing the boundaries in a way. And then once the artist feels their groove and kind of finds their voice and gets into it, I lose interest, dude.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it becomes a worn path, and you know what you're getting. And if I continue to refine this book, there's a chance that I will shape it into, I'll miss the opportunity to have that kind of punk aesthetic, that kind of, I'm DIYing it and I'm doing my best. And yeah, there's some pimples, but there's also some interesting ideas and new concepts. I think taking a snapshot of a time it's important. I don't think you want to lose that. I think it's something to look back on and iterate. So even looking at music sometimes, when I look at bands' first or second albums, and my first thing is oh my God, they're deconstructing this genre. They're taking the pop song and they're making something new. And I get really inspired by that. And then I hear their second and third album and I go, oh, no, they weren't. They just couldn't do it yet. They just didn't have the skill set to make that perfect pop song yet. So they kept all the bumps. But to me, like, that stuff inspires me. I love that. And it's almost disappointing to me when there's a refinement to it. That's it. I'm just going to send mine out as is. All the spelling errors, all the mistakes.
Definitely fix all the typos. Don't let typos. No, don't definitely fix typos.
No character motivations.
Acts? What are even acts?
I'm going to swap the names around.
This is a 20 act structure. I don't even ever heard of
it. No, but you're right. I mean, it needs to get to a point where it's a delicate balance. You want to make sure it's as good as it can be, but you don't want to take it so far that you're compromising your initial vision as you've changed so much over the year or years that you've been working on the thing.
Yeah, and I also think like the things that you've learned, I mean, you can go back and certainly make some tweaks of things you've learned. I've certainly done that, but doing it to a point where I was just reading like one sci-fi author, I forget their name. They're referenced in an article I was reading. They know when they're done with it, if the changes and the tweaks they're making is less than 10% of like all the words written or something like that. All right, if I'm making less than 10% changes here, then I'm probably done with this and needs to go on to an editor or someone else.
And then there's the big ones, right? Like, so I received some beta feedback. Some of it was really, really encouraging, and some of it was very overwhelming. I got some that was like huge chunks of setting need to change, which would have been like 30 to 40% rewrite. And like, I texted you, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And you're like, hold your horses. Ease up for a second here. That's one person's opinion. Like, you can finesse certain things, but you don't need to dive into what would almost be a complete rewrite. Because I do feel like I'm too far along to kick that off. And honestly, I think that would almost completely derail me at this point.
Yeah.
Because there'd be this cascading effect of edits. So
yeah, and every time you make an edit, I mean, it's like anything else, any other system, software, or whatever. Anytime you add something that something already exists, you're going to introduce errors somewhere, either whether it be logic, continuity, typos, something. So making sure that you're taking the feedback. Sometimes you'll get that is like, this whole thing is kind of a mess. Take a step back, realize it's one person. If you're starting to see a pattern, I think across beta readers, you've gotten feedback from like 3 out of like the 5, 6 people. Some people didn't get back to you. That's fine. But you've got enough to work with from them. I was in the same boat where like some people didn't get back to me. That's totally fine. But I've got enough from like the 2 or 3 people, and they're all flagging the same thing. We've mentioned this before. If more than 3 people are flagging the same issues, then okay, it's probably an issue.
Yeah.
Address that, because when you go to address that, you're going to end up changing a bunch of other things.
A personal example, something that I need to shore up before I query, my character motivations need to be clear. I have them, but they don't always, I don't have scenes necessarily that like completely and utterly spell them out. And that was a piece of feedback that many beta readers gave me, including this person who gave me this, like the huge chunk. The other feedback that I'd gotten was like, I like stories that have a smaller scale in Act 3.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that from one person.
Yeah.
But in order to implement that change, it's huge. Yeah. It was huge to change. And I personally like the bombast of Act 3s sometimes. So I can take a piece of that and like refine the character motivations without completely changing my like locales and the scale of it, right? So, and he was the only one who had said like, oh, this is too much. Yeah. I think conceptually there's a lot going on and I can refine it. But as far as, sitting down and saying, all right, I've got another year and I need to completely rework where my characters are going and what they're doing. I mean, it's a great way to never finish.
You've gotten some, good feedback from a handful of beta readers. What are your current goalposts then for you saying like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm ready to move on. Like, what are the key things in your mind to get you to being like happy? I know you want to work on this for the rest of your life and you want to power thesaurus every single word that you have, but you can't do that. I won't let you do it. So what are your goalposts in your mind?
So I have to finish.
Yeah, you have to finish.
So,
yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, I know it's tough.
So current goalposts, so I can actually move on to another story, which I really honestly would like to do.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm attached to my current characters. I know I said a lot about fear and control, but in a way, there's going to be a goodbye. I've been spending a couple years with these imaginary people I've created.
Yeah.
And it'll be tough to say goodbye to them. Okay. So my clear goalposts right now are, I want to compile all of the beta feedback that I've received.
Mm-hmm.
I want to break it into action items. And then I actually want to go to my third act first.
Mm-hmm.
I want to refine that because it did not get the love that my first and second acts did. It just didn't. And it never does.
Yep.
So I want to start there, clean that up. And then I want to go and implement beta feedback probably over the next 2 months. Then knowing full well that through that whole process, I have introduced new mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go and do another reread, but hopefully not a rewrite. Like this is where I don't want to get into cleaning up every one of my sentences, which I have like,
yeah.
I have like I do it. I do it because like things can always be said a little cleaner.
We'll have to check in more frequently when you start doing it.
Yeah.
Like, you got to move on.
Yeah, move on. And then once that's done, I want to query. And while querying, because that's just going to be like this kind of pragmatic, joyless thing, I'd like to be working on a new story at the same time so I can keep the creative momentum going. So those are my goalposts. I want to be done. I don't want this to bite me, but by like summer, like I want to be querying by summer.
Do you think you'll have a moment of like, you know what, this feels right. I feel good about this. Or do you think you'll still be kind of hung up on, you know, I go back to page 35 and fix that line?
Of course I'm going to be hung up on
it. Okay. Because I am too.
and some folks are like, hey, when you're done with the next round, send me another beta. And I'm like, ooh, that's a good way to kick it out another 6 months. I could send it to more people. The ones who didn't read it this time, maybe they'll read it, but I think I'm done with beta feedback. I think 2 rounds is enough for me. I might send it to you. Yeah. You know, I might send it to Jill, like the folks that I'm really close with, but otherwise,
I mean, you're submitting it to Writer Syndrome book, so yeah, I'll have to reread it as part of the submission process. For
and you just got to rubber stamp it, right? I thought you said you weren't accepting new queries.
It changes week by week.
I mean, knowing myself, I'll get to a point where I have like my query letter in the package, and right before I'm about to hit send, I'll say, I should read this one more time. Even though, I mean, every query package is a little bit different, and maybe we should have a cast about this as I start going through it, because some want full manuscripts,
some only want a couple chapters.
Excerpts.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is I actually need to cut, about 17K for some submissions. I'm a little long for a first-time writer. It shouldn't be over 100K.
Yeah, you got a lot of words. I would love.
I'll tell you what, though. Every time I edit, what do? I add
more.
About 5 to 10K.
That's so many more errors you introduce. I'd take that 10K. That'd make me comfortable. If I had another 10K, I'd be like, all right, now I feel really good about it.
I'll send it along. It's crazy because one of the pieces of beta feedback I got that would pad it out that I wanted to do was like do vignettes of Outbreak, like vignettes of non-related characters, which totally fits, but does not fit with the current length of my book. How about you? What about your goalposts?
I mean, mine were pretty clear cut. Get through, the content edit. Okay, that's one. Get through the copy line edit. Okay, that's another one. Get through like another small round of beta readers. Then get through proofread, which I'll have completed by the time this episode airs. Those were clear. Those are clear goals. Now I'm at the point of like jump ship here. I've got, I got to say, okay, I'm done with this thing. And I'm still getting notes from some other, beta readers. One of my biggest fans. Sending me a lot of, you should add you should add in some detail here and there.
Hey man, I'm glad you sent it to your dad. I think was a big that was a goalpost in and of itself, right?
Was.
You waited quite a while to make sure it was, near pristine shape to send it to your pop.
Yeah. And he sent me a lot of great feedback, but he's still got more to come, and It's been good. But there's just details he's sending me. He's like, oh, what about this? What do you think about this? Like some of these details, genre readers, they may kind of scoff at this if you don't include this thing. I was like, you got a point. But now I'm like, well, I'm introducing new things and new potential errors. And now I'm like, all right, how long am I picking at this and adding these details? But there's some things I'm going to add. So it's like, I've got my list of 10 items I need to make tweaks. I think I'll be comfortable with saying like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I think I've been ready to say that for a while now. So, but those are my goalposts. So once I get to those like 4 or 5 things, I think that'll add to it. Once I finish a proofread, I'm going to sit down and end to end full read through and see where these little, my notes of 10 or 15 items to kind of add some, detail to kind of make it feel like I know what the hell I'm talking about. Even just a little bit, see if where those fit, see if I can get them in.
It's crazy, right? I mean, it's nerve-wracking to me that you've received your piece back from the proofreader. The fact that you're even considering touching it again is like filling me with anxiety.
You and me both.
Because in theory, right, like you shouldn't. you should be done.
In theory, I mean, I think there's always going to be, the changes are very, like, I'm adding in like a line of dialogue here and there. And I mean, even the proofreader came back with some logical stuff too that I have to address and add like some little context, like clarification. So it's like, all right,
I know you don't have a cat, but like, it could be like you accidentally hit a key and don't notice it. And now, like, I don't know, I feel like you could be introducing errors that you can't necessarily, I would almost say, and maybe not to kick out your goalposts, but if you do anything more than like 5K of addition, I would send it back to a proofreader.
Oh, no, it won't be that much. No.
Okay, so you're not going to take what your dad had said about like...
No. I'm like the things I'm adding would be like a line of dialogue to clarify something or a sentence here and there. Like at most, it's like 500 words I'm adding at most.
I'm already picturing like the period outside of the quotation mark, you know, like little small things that are just going to creep in.
100%. I mean, those are the things I got to double, triple check. And it will go, like my editor was like, hey, when there are some tweaks you have to make here. And when you do, I'll get them back. I mean, with Word, you can do track changes, comparisons. So she can see all the changes I've added or removed.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
So she'll see. So it's not like she's got to reread the whole damn thing. She's just going to go through and see the things where I added stuff.
Yep. Okay. So you're going to have another set of eyes on this one more time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not going like if I add 1,000 words, that'd be a lot. So it's like, this is gonna be
even so. I think I was overestimating just the idea of touching it at all. But if she's going to take a look at it again, I think that's totally cool.
Yeah. But I mean, 100%, like that's definitely a concern of like, even you adding 500 words, like that's definitely room for error to happen, you know?
Yeah.
But yes, that'll be the next big goalpost, and then sending it back to her to kind of review, make sure there's no typos or anything else like that. And that's it. And then I think I will be okay with moving on.
Yeah. And I'll say, right, like some authors, self-published and traditionally published, they work on their pieces for like over 10 years.
Yeah.
And, kudos to them for being able to do that. I don't want to. I don't. Like in 10 years from now, I hope I have like 3 or 4 books finished.
Yeah.
Right. And granted, those who worked on theirs for a decade, the quality is going to be a bit higher. Well, maybe not necessarily. Who knows? Like, I don't know. I can't even imagine what that process looks like. Yeah. If I'd started this book 10 years ago and how much I would have changed and how much it's just a completely different concept to me.
Yeah.
I'd much rather like get out quick drafts and then clean them up and then send them along.
I mean, that's it, right? It's the shaping of the clay. It's if anything, you're building next iteration, working on next iteration, and refining to the point where you're like, okay, if you're making small word changes, you're probably done. If you making less than 10% of word changes, you're probably done. I think
it gets to goals too, right? Like my goal isn't to win a Pulitzer. My goal isn't even to write really literary fiction. No. I'm trying to write a thrill ride with a bit of commentary. Yeah. And then I want to write another one. Yep. So, and honestly, kicking off, it was kind of hard to swallow that pill. I was like, when's my literary fiction piece going to come out? Like that's kind of what I was waiting for. Because every time I sat down to write, B-movie horror came out. And I was like, no. Like, what's the story I have to tell about World War II or the Great Depression or the 60s or... I don't have one, and if I do, there's probably going to be some kind of monster in it, some kind of, Dunwich horror type thing. So
I've got no literary fiction plans. This isn't the Great American Novel. It's just a fun thriller, and I've got others planned for it, and hopefully people enjoy it. That's it. So,
but I'd say, I guess if you're going for the Great American Novel, your process is going to look a lot different than what ours is.
Yeah, probably. It's a lot of self-introspective. I don't know, like a lot of hanging out by the ocean and I don't know, thinking about boats and shit. I don't know.
Yeah. A lot of feeling like a Mr. Smarty Pants or a Mrs. Smarty Pants. Yeah.
A lot of looking off into the yonder and wondering what life has to give. I don't know.
But I think you can do that, but just make sure there's zombies or a Dracula chasing you,
Yeah, or some secret agency, who wants
some secret agents who happen to be genetically engineered zombies.
Just make it fun if you're going to go literary. Oh, man, that feels like a good way to end. So, I mean, overall, kind of wrapping up, I think like knowing when to let go of the masterpiece, right? It's like you've got the clear kind of goalposts, your editing points, your revisions, your beta readers, making sure you're clearing those things. And once you get to the end of all of that, if you find yourself, tweaking a couple of words here and there, or going back and like, maybe I should do this. And it's like, you're done. It's okay. Let it go. Let it rip. Let the world see it. and they may like it, they may not. You move on to maybe something new. Letting it sit there on a shelf and you're making tweaks here and there does. I don't think it does anything for anyone. So
I'd say there's a human element where like I'm definitely building in that fault. I guess like I know that I'm going to go through it again. I just know I am.
Yeah.
And I'm, no matter what you tell me, Russ, I'm going to go through it again, but I'm not going to beat myself up for it. Right. Like that's one more piece, I'll plan to go through it one more time, but once that's done, then I'm going to try to listen to you and stop picking at it like this scab that won't heal.
I'm going to do the same thing when I go through and do my final read through. I'm going to make the notes of the list of the things I think I need to change, and I'll probably bring them to you and I'll review them with you, and I'll be like, hey man, here are like the 10 or 15 things. And I'm going to sit there and be like, do I really need to change this? Is this really that important? What is this? Is this something critical? No, scratch it off, forget it. And
you might want to go to somebody else because I'm very big picture. I'll tell you right. If you're going to me, this is the answer you're going to get. Don't.
That might be the right approach.
Who knows? Maybe I'll say work on a few small things, but I'm always big picture when it comes to stuff like that. I'm like, who is going to notice that? Yeah. Who's reading your book that closely?
I think are we okay with being done with this?
I think we need to stop this podcast.
Can we just let go of this? Not the podcast entirely, but this episode. Can we let go of this episode right now? Is our masterpiece?
I think we need to stop the whole thing and start a new one.
Start a new one?
Yeah. No, I think I'm ready to stop this episode. Although I do think I am curious about what you're reading, what you're watching.
Yeah, I've been a little lazy with my reading lately. I'm still working through this Magpie Murders one by Anthony Horowitz. It's like a Agatha Christie kind of whodunit. It's great. It's very meta. It's picked up. I think the last time I talked about it, I was like, it's kind of slow moving. There's a lot of just scene descriptions, not a lot of dialogue. And now it's kind of shifted. Tons of characters. I was thinking about it today. I was like, man, there are so many characters in this book, but it definitely takes this little meta moment halfway through the book. Page numbering changes and it turns into like kind of a different book.
Interesting.
It's kind of fun. I don't think it's spoiling anything because it's actually part of like the description on the back about it's a book within a book kind of. The book you start reading isn't the real world. It's another book that an author has written who's been murdered. So it's kind of fun. So I'm almost done with that. Outside of that, just been keeping up with Last of Us, which will probably be done by the time this airs. And that's it. What about you? What do you got?
I don't know. Ever since you dressed me down for talking about the same books, I feel like I can't share what I've been reading. I just did because I've been sharing the same book. Look at you, you hypocrite.
I know. Yeah. Hey, well,
I'll just say broadly that every book that I've mentioned for the past 3 or 4 episodes,
if it's the same book, I don't even mention it.
I'm just finishing them. So like, I feel like the way that I read books is I batch them. I have like an audiobook, I have an ebook, and I have like an actual hard copy book, and I'm coming to the end of all of them. So
you spread your reading across many books at the same time.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what too, like when it came to editing and reading lately, I haven't been doing as much as I want to be doing. Work's been crazy busy. Family stuff's been very, very busy. Yeah. Been stressful. And what goes with that? Drinking, which always erodes at my productivity. I'm starting to get back into it. I'm starting to like read again. But it's funny how like my reading and writing go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Like the more I read, the more motivated I get to kind of get back into editing. So I'm starting to have the time to think about it again. So yeah, nothing new on my end. Just finishing up a ton of stuff. Same thing, watching The Last of Us. That's about it. I'm trying to think if I've seen any great movies lately. No. I haven't seen anything that good.
Me neither. Well, I think our goal for the next episode will be we have started and or finished new books. All right, I think that's our episode.
What are we chatting about next time?
Next episode, I think we're going to chat about story versus plot.
All right.
There are differences.
Now you tell me.
Well,
at the end of all things.
Yeah, something I didn't learn until halfway through mine as well. So so we're going to dive into that. But that's our episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed it, think someone might like it, send along to them. If you have a topic idea or any feedback, you can find us on Twitter at writer_syndrome.
Yeah, or I'll say, man, if you're an author who wants to be on the cast, let us know. We're always looking for guests.
Absolutely. You want to talk about any one of the topics with us? We'll happy to just chat away. Reach out to us. You can email us too at chat@writersyndrome.com. And then head over to writersyndrome.com for all our other episodes. Next episode, talking about story versus plot. I think that's it. I think
that's it.
We're done. I think we're ready to let go of this masterpiece, right?
Let's let it go. This has been perfect.
Till next time, keep writing.